Welcome back to the Indiewood Podcast, a podcast about indie films and the many hats filmmakers have to wear in order to make those films. I'm Yaroslav Altunin. I'm a writer, director, editor, cinematographer. Not a producer. I don't like producing. Producing, I feel like, is way out of my comfort zone, my league, my pay grade. Welcome to episode 2 of my chat with the amazing multi-hyphenate, Jamie Parslow.
Hi.
Jamie is a director, writer, cinematographer, and producer.
Yeah.
And like legitimately so. Not like, oh yeah, he's a cinematographer. He shot like a short once. No. Like you have a job where you actively are the cinematographer for a big corporation. You've shot films before. You've produced films before. You've written and directed, and I've read some of your work, and it's a lot of fun.
It's fun. Thank you.
And we met at a film festival.
We did. We met at Dances with Films.
Last episode, we talked about your film, Black Hole, how that kind of came to be, which I think is really cool. And if you're just catching our session with our series with Jamie, you can go see Black Hole on YouTube on Dust, or you can find a link to it on Jamie's website, which is jamieparslow.com. Yeah. So we met at a film festival, Dances with Films, which is a cool little indie film festival that's in Hollywood. If anybody is ever applying to film festivals, that's one I think that indie films should apply for.
I love that film festival so much. I love the people. I love Lindsay specifically is like one of my favorite human beings on the planet.
Right?
Yeah, she's really lovely.
Although I do want to say, just make sure you check your email and your spam if you've ever submitted, because they'll reach out to you and be like, hi, we just want to talk to you, like, and gauge your interest, and they'll actively reach out to you. And if you don't respond, they won't accept your film.
I didn't know that.
And that was what happened to us. Like Lindsay's email went into our spam folder, and we found it. And it was like a week from the deadline or something. And then we emailed her back like, no, we're interested. Like, we just couldn't find the email that you sent. So yeah, make sure to check your email if you apply to Dances with Films, because some film festivals don't do that.
No.
They'll just be like, you're in or not, bye.
That is really how it works sometimes. It's an interesting thing. I would argue smaller film festivals do that, though.
Will they like reach out and it's a bit more personable?
Yeah, because my experience was I went Black Hole, went to Fantastic Fest, Fantasia Fest, Film Quest, Dances with Films, among many others. But the Fantasia, Fantastic, Dances with Films, and Film Quest, they were really personable. Really personable. Okay. It was really lovely. It wasn't like hey, you're in. Show up.
Here's your time.
Yeah. One of my favorite ones also was Horsetooth, and they were really cool.
What's Horsetooth?
Horsetooth International are out of Colorado.
Okay.
They're super cool. They actually, not to sort of self-inflate, but they saw Black Hole. Black Hole was tied in votes in terms of like winning, but the other one won because it was a drama. Not because it was a drama. They won as it was a drama, and they were like, well, we got to give this thing something. So they created they created a new genre, comedy. They called it the Matt Stone Trey Parker Comedy Award, and they made that for Black Hole. So it was a very inaugural like comedy award that they gave, and they're super nice, really cool guys.
So, was Dances with Films the first festival you did?
Yeah. Dances with Films was the first festival I did, because when I did Patch, it was also the first film festival that got me in. And so I created a nice little rapport with everyone. And so I really liked it so much that I was just like, you know what, I'm going to do that again with Black Hole and give them first billing. A lot of film festivals, for those of you who don't know, a lot of film festivals won't accept you sometimes if you aren't
if you premiered it
if you've premiered it somewhere else. You have to be really exceptional to get into a lot of other film festivals sometimes. And so, or you just have to know some folks. There's that part of it too. But Dances with Films, I just really like them so much. I like the experience. It's also close to home. I live in Studio City, so it's easier that way to like sort of just pop on across the way.
Yeah, it's easy to justify the trip.
Yeah, it's nice
to drive.
There aren't a lot of film festivals in Los Angeles, surprisingly.
No, yeah, I think some of the big ones that people might want to consider, especially for short films, Dances with Films, Holly Shorts.
If you can get into Holly Shorts, that's a big one. That's a really that's prestige. That's like
it's an Oscar qualifying.
Yeah, you probably have an Oscar movie in Holly Shorts if you're going to that one.
Yeah,
I would say so. Film Invasion's really nice. That one's run in Sherman Oaks area, and then they're sort of affiliated with the Sherman Oaks Film Festival as well. So really cool. Jeff runs it. Jeff Howard runs it. It's just it's super small, really intimate, and I love that. It
Okay.
was one of the sort of cooler things you can get into.
And they premiere at that Regal in Sherman Oaks.
The Sherman Oaks Film Festival might, but where I was at was called like the Whitefire Room, and
Okay.
it was this itty bitty, like no more than 30-person film or
Like a screening room.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it's cool.
Very
It's not
cool.
bad.
So my big question to you, and something I want to talk with you about, is like, what can filmmakers get, or what filmmakers should get, or try to seek from a film festival beyond just a premiere? Because I think, you know, you premiere, that's one thing, but I think you've already touched a little bit on it. This idea of like building a rapport with the film festival staff, and you keeping up with them, you know, coming back and like giving them an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because that's, I think, in part how a filmmaker grows their career. And I think this is going to be a fun conversation about how to grow your career, especially as a multi-hyphenate where you write, direct, produce, and you make your own movies.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you have a bit more experience with film festivals than me, you know, from your experience with Patch, with Black Hole.
Yeah, and then Breathing Happy as well, yeah.
And when was that?
That was a feature film that I produced.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was recent.
That's the most recent one, yeah.
Okay. That's the one we talked about off mic, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And so having kind of, you know, this experience with film festivals, what's the, I don't want to say over under, like that's not the right term, but like what's the group of film festivals that you always kind of seek out in Los Angeles and then internationally? Because you just talked about Colorado.
Yeah.
I know there's a couple other film festivals you hit. Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I like to think in terms of like the best film festivals in terms of like their grandiosity or like their whatever. Each film festival, assuming they're not ones that are just like, hey, give us money and we'll say that we premiered it. Each festival has their own sort of, they're all trying. And they're all trying to do something cool and unique. Sunscreen Film Festival, which is started in my hometown in St. Petersburg, Florida, they also have one out here. I met some really cool people, some really good actors and whatnot at that film festival. And it's not huge. It's not very well known, but it was a good festival to go to because it was small. And I think that that's one of those things that you sort of forget when you go to film festivals is that everyone's vying for the same space and the same attention. And I don't like to go to film festivals to think in terms of attention. I like to go there to, one, I want to see other movies. I really like being inspired by other movies or being inspired by things I don't want to do sometimes.
Well, speaking of inspiration in other films, we're at Dances with Films. There was one movie that premiered and it won, I think it was a feature and it won one of the big awards. It's been a while, so I don't remember specifically what the award was. It wasn't Captive State. That's not what it was called. It was something very similar, though.
Okay.
And it was about, and it was a wife actor and a husband filmmaker, and they were both in it.
Yeah.
And they shot it when she was pregnant. And they shot it during the pandemic.
Right.
So they used the backdrop of the pandemic and all this footage they shot of like riots and, you know, street closures and people in masks. Do you remember what the title was?
There was a feature film?
Yeah.
No, you know what? When I went, there was another short film with a woman who was pregnant and making the short film while she was pregnant. And it was really good.
You know, you're using this kind of moment in history, the pandemic and this kind of civil unrest to really kind of, and from their perspective, what they did is they used that environment as a prism for like their own experience in that time frame. Like, oh, we have a kid. We're pregnant. Like we're artists in a world where, you know, things are not great.
Yeah.
You know, civilly, is that the right word? Civilly?
Sure.
And then, you know, also with the pandemic. So it was just, I had such a appreciation for the film, not just for the content, but for their approach to it. And I think, you know, as you're saying, like you go to film festivals to be inspired and to meet other filmmakers, that was such a cool thing for me to experience because I was like, it was just two people. They did the film themselves.
Yeah.
And it was a feature and
it's amazing.
From everything I've seen of it, phenomenal. I didn't get a chance to catch it, which really bummed me out because it was during another screening that I wanted to watch.
I saw a movie. I won't name the movie because it inspired me in the wrong way. But what it did is it portrayed alcoholism in a way that I didn't love, and I thought it was one of those sort of cliches where you're sort of like, alcoholism isn't like a stumbly bumbly like my life is sad kind of thing. Alcoholism can be as I drink this beer alcoholism can be functional and it can be jovial and it can be a thing that someone makes a choice and they say I will die via alcohol, and that's okay with me because that's what I want to do. I wrote my movie Hair of the God because of that. I was so I was so tired of the cliche. I was like, let's just go the opposite direction and have somebody who's proud of being an alcoholic and like makes it their identity. And I thought that was a really interesting way to.
When I read that script, an early draft of it, it really resonated with me in that kind of way, because I know of someone who is kind of in that space in regards to alcoholism.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh, I'm fine. Like, and they're someone who doesn't believe in like therapy and alcoholism. Like, I can stop whenever I want, you know? And then they get to a point where they're like, I really can't, but I'm just doing it so I don't get more sick. And it's like, you know, it's a disease on some level,
right?
You know, that really affects you on some really scary levels. And and when you see it, like, I remember watching House of Cards, and they had that guy who was, you know, a drunk, and I don't know if he was an alcoholic per se, but they're like, oh, he's just kind of, you know, bumbling.
Yeah.
And it's not like that.
No, it's really not. And you know, you never know who, and that's the thing, is that like you never know who an alcoholic is or anything, and not to turn this into an alcoholics conversation.
Right.
But you know, speaking of liminal spaces, they live in the liminal spaces.
Yeah.
They live, you know, there are people who are functioning all day. Doctors. There are people who are really important, who are struggling and have to have like a little shot here and there just to get through. And you would never know. You truly would never know. They just have to be in that space.
Yeah. So back to film festivals and that movie. So how did it inspire you in the wrong way?
Well, because I watched a character sort of just be sad and whatever, and sort of it was cartoonish and cliche, and I was just like, this feels like it's not truthful to the process. And so I wanted to go the opposite direction. But that happens, you know, this sort of inspirational, you know, somebody does something good or bad, one way or the other. Someone told me many years ago, they were like, oh, I watched your movies back then, and it made me say, oh, I could also be a filmmaker and do better than that. I was like, oops.
That's funny you say that, because that's how I like came into film. It was 7th grade, and I watched a movie, Bloodsport.
Oh, okay.
And you know, I don't want to say it was a terrible movie, because Bloodsport is its own thing. Like, candid films are their own genre of movies, where it's like a little campy and like a little, you know, it's that scene from what's that faux documentary about the rock band?
Oh, Spinal Tap.
Yeah, it's like that scene from Spinal Tap, where like, oh, it goes up to 11. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, oh, what? Yeah. So that candid films really just turn up to 11. So I was watching Bloodsport, and the next day I was at school, walking to school, and I was like, oh, I would do this differently, I would do that differently, and my brain clicked, and I was like, oh, people make movies.
That exercise is so important. That's sort of like, how would I do it, in what way? And that's kind of the cool thing about film festivals generally, going to film festivals and watching how people do something good or bad. If you can see through the veil, you can maybe think to yourself, oh, how would I not see through the veil? How would I make it to where an audience would be like, oh, I can't tell that I can effectively feel the camera on the other side of that scene that I'm watching. That's really important, because you're exercising parts of your brain that you probably wouldn't exercise if you had seen a perfect movie. Yeah. And I think it's kind of hard to watch a Hollywood movie and be inspired sometimes, because Hollywood movies are $70 million, $100 million, $200 million. And that's not money you have. No. You can't access that.
Even a small quote unquote Hollywood indie film, which is $20 million. It's still millions of dollars.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And so you look at that and you're like, I don't find inspiration other than like great writing or great acting and sometimes great directing, but I don't find inspiration about how I can do something from like this itty bitty nothing space. You know what I mean? And when I'm able to watch like a small movie, I'm like, okay, that was a really great scene that you did that for no money. That was really, really cool. Like watching Coherence or something like that, and you're sort of like, how did they do this shot, and how did they time this stuff out? Yeah. And you go, they had no money. That's really, really cool. I would have done it better in this way, you know, maybe not, obviously. Yeah. But you start working that part of your brain. You start going, oh, I could have done it this way, and I could have done it that way. And that's really super cool. And sometimes you're just super surprised by small movies that just execute perfectly all the way across the spectrum. Yeah. You know, and you're like, how did you do that? And you get to know those people, and they're like, well, we cut here and what do you know? They've got their stories, but
Yeah, like that movie with the girl who was pregnant and shot it with her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And just to kind of touch back on that film, it was about how like the country was taken over by some sort of dictatorship or something. I forget the specifics of it, but there was a kind of like sci-fi element to it. A little man in the castle, you know, a little bit of I think maybe there were aliens. I don't know, but it was really cool to see and you know, inspiring to kind of see someone achieve a feature film that is good.
Yeah,
with just
it's hard.
two people. It's one of the most inspiring films for me. One of my favorite films is the movie Monsters by Gareth Edwards, his first film. And the story goes is that he, you know, got under $1 million to shoot it from a company he worked with. They helped produce it, and it was him, a camera on his shoulder, two actors, Scooter McNairy and his wife at the time, who I still think they're married. And he's now Scooter McNairy's in a film called See No Evil with James McAvoy. Looks terrifying. And so in Monsters, it was Gareth Edwards, a sound guy, a fixer is what he said, and the two actors. And they had like
fixer.
Well, because like a guy who just
a key grip. Yeah, that's fine. That's
what
they call key grips.
No, it was like a guy who like found locations for them. Like, like it was just the guy.
So he's a producer.
Yeah, but they were in Mexico. Producer's a good producer's a good word for it. But he was a fixer. And she just got stuff for him. And so it was like that small group of people in like a bus.
Yeah.
And they would drive around Mexico, like jump out, shoot, you know, off an outline. It was all improv too. And shoot with like locals and like, you know, it was all like there was no other actors.
Yeah.
And then that's it. And he did all the VFX himself because he worked as a VFX guy for commercials. Yeah. And it looks so good. And there's this feeling of like longing and I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't feel super narrative, but narrative at the same time. There's a lot of like.
I'm always I watched Red Rocket recently, and we'll go back to the film festival conversation here as well. But like I watched Red Rocket recently, which is Sean Baker, and how he's able to get non-actors to perform really heavy lines that that an actor. Somebody who's not an actor reading a script would just say it in a hammy, like actory way, like a capital A acting way. But he's able to like get them to improv a line that is meaningful and deep and heartfelt. And that person, you know, did not come up as like some big, you know, to do. That's the kind of stuff you'd see at film festivals. Sean Baker came up through film festivals like that as well.
Just for those listening, Sean Baker did Tangerine, which was like a big feature film shot on iPhones.
And he just won the Palme d'Or.
Really? For what?
I forget what the name of
the new film he's doing.
Yeah, right? The new film he just did. Yeah, it's so he just got that.
Good for him. He's an interesting filmmaker because he does that kind of like low budget, like I don't want to say not low effort. That's not the right word. Like kind of running around with iPhones, you know, whatever that word is.
Yeah,
and then
he
goes and like does something on film. Yeah. And he did what was the one in Florida?
Florida Project.
The Florida Project. Yeah, that was like film, but also has a scene in the iPhone, and
that's very close to how I grew up too. Like that sort of like super poverty, and that. So it's really I love that movie. It's so good. I know, right? Yeah, but what I guess what I'm getting at is that you were asking, what do you get out of film festivals?
Well, let's refine it. So, what do you when you do a project and you go into a film festival? What do you expect out of it? What do you want to get out of it? And what do you think other people should get out of it?
I love connecting with people personally. Yeah. I love going. I went to Fantastic Fest, and the very first thing that happened, I want to say her name was Amy. Very first thing she did is we show up to the karaoke bar, and she's like, "Shots," and we're like, "Yeah, let's do that." So me and my wife were like, "Okay, sure." And they did Fantastic Fest rules because they'll do games. So instead of doing panels, they'll just do like boxing or like sumo, or trivia. Suits. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, that's a super cool way to do it. But it is connections, it's inspiration, and all those things really, you think, well, it's not really what I'm there for. But, you know, you can get like managers interested in you and agents. I know I did after Black Hole. There was two people who reached out to me about representing, and it never matriculated, never came through. Because I didn't have like another feature written ready to go, and they wanted to just adapt Black Hole into a feature film. I was like, I have no idea how to do that. Those people are there. I would argue a thing you shouldn't do personally is, and this is just because I've had a really negative connotation with it, which is you shouldn't go there trying to be the top dog.
Yeah.
You should not be there trying to be the guy who, or the girl or whomever that shows up and you're like, I want to be the one in charge, or I want to be the one who's the winner. I want you to look at me. Do not do that. I had an instance where I was trying to just pal around. This is sort of the night that we met, and there was a guy there who, talented filmmaker, like no doubt about it, whatever. But he did not want my time. He didn't know who I was. He didn't care who I was. He was just like, I'm not here for this chatty stuff. And I was like, ooh, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah.
And I'm not in that guy's pocket any longer. I mean, no matter what he does from that point forward, I'm like, good for you, but like I don't care. There was another person I met.
Just to add to that, because your success and the reason why I think Black Hole did so well, not only because you have the experience and kind of the talent, but you have this community that supports you, you know, and you built that through
being nice.
Yeah, being nice and
I'm not saying that about myself. I'm just saying generally.
Yeah,
like,
you're an asshole.
I'm actually kind of a jerk. I'm gonna be honest with you.
No. You're very nice. I think that's why we met and kind of connected, because I'm terrible at networking, and we all had this.
Let's face it. It was our wives that were the.
That's true.
Yeah,
they're like
really good.
Locked eyes across the room, and then we're like,
that.
okay, I guess we'll.
Yeah, they're so great. About that. I would be nowhere without my wife.
But yeah, like I said, you built up this momentum to create from your ability to network with people and build relationships.
Yeah.
And with someone who, like that person, doesn't want to, like they're going to hit a wall.
Well, like I said,
how talented they are.
Some of my best friends right now, we met at a film festival in high school.
Yeah.
And those are the relationships I have now. And they're not faux relationships. They are people I have deep conversations with, and we talk about things, but we also create, and we make art, and we rely on each other. It's really, really important that those are the kinds of friendships you can make. I was saying there was another guy that I met that I went to a film festival that I didn't have a project in, but it's a film festival I had been to, and I really liked him. I really liked his work. I liked his acting. He was an actor, and I came out and I was like, oh my God, that was such a great performance, so on and so forth. I saw it, and he asked me, he was like, so did you have a film in this festival? I said, no, I had it last year, but not this year. I'm just here to support. And he goes, okay, thanks. And he just left. And I was like, wow. And I was like, well, never mind. You just burned that. You just burned that. Like you had. And I'm not saying that I'm someone to have an opportunity with. I'm saying that if you had said that to somebody who was like
of value, not of value, sorry.
You're not wrong.
That had, like, let's say, more weight they can throw.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that you could burn that bridge easily. You know?
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And you think that's not the way to do it. And even if you're just having a bad day, like, just be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm not really in, like, I'm just out of, I say that all the time. Or I'm having a bad day. I'm always just like, I don't know what's going on. I'm so sorry if I get testy with you. Blah blah blah. I'm just not a good day. So
I feel like it's to use that word again, valuable. It's valuable to reach out to your kind of the people that surround you in a film festival and communicate with them and see why they are there.
Yeah.
I remember in grad school someone came in to talk with us. They were a filmmaker who did oh my God, I forget the film now. So long ago, they went to Sundance every year, regardless of if they had a film there or not.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were just like, let's just go to film festivals, chat with people, and then they build relationships, and then they build their community, and then they build their, whatever. And so that's going to kind of segue into my next question, because for me, even if you have a film and you don't get into any film festival, let's say you apply to like 100, not 100, 50. No film festival takes you. Yeah. You should still go to some of them. Especially if they're local.
You should know what's getting in and what's not getting in. Because a really interesting thing that you find out is that not every film festival is made the same. Not everyone has the same taste. The curators like some things in one aspect and they don't like other things in other aspects. And I would argue my taste is different from some curators. I go, why did this film get in here? And then other ones I'm sort of like, you're sort of like, wow, this is amazing. Like, how did they get these films into here?
That was my experience with Dance with Films. I saw two very different films, and one of them I was like, how did this get in? And the other film was like, it makes sense that this got in.
It's taste. It's I mean, at that point in time, because you've normally got one person who's sort of one or two people sometimes who are looking at the content and being like, does this fit
It's
us?
never one person. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's never one
And every
person,
year
but-
there's like a different theme or a different kind of vibe that they're going for. And it just depends on what the festival wants.
Well, okay, so great anecdote is there's the last movie that I produced, Breathing Happy, we had and have strong relationships with the people at Fantastic Fest. There was a notion at some point that this movie might get into Fantastic Fest. I personally was like, I don't think so. It's a long road up. It's not really their kit and caboodle. And some other folks were like, oh, it's a shoe, and we know the people, and so on and so forth. And I was like, well, I think it's got to fit the aesthetic of the festival itself. And sure enough, there was some shock when it didn't get in. And it's not because they didn't like us, didn't like our movie, anything like that. It's just that it didn't fit the vibe of that film festival. And that's okay.
It's like a gallery, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes a gallery has a showing that fits a theme, a certain aesthetic, a certain style of art, and then you can't bring in like, you know, claymation into an exhibition that's all about oil paintings. You know what I mean? It doesn't fit the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also think about it this way. There is a delineation between a short film going to a film festival and a feature film going to a film festival.
Because a feature film, they'll play in a theater for 2 hours.
Yeah.
A short film will play in the same theater with 20 other shorts.
Yes.
Or 15 or whatever.
But the thing is, a short film isn't there to sell something. Isn't there to, some people make, also, I'll put it to you this way, never, ever make a proof of concept. Just stop doing that immediately.
Make a short film.
End it. Just make the film. Anyone, what a filmmaker, what anybody wants to know is whether or not you can tell a story.
Yeah.
Just tell the story. Like, they don't care that you that's what I messed up with Patch. I was like, oh, I'll leave it open-ended at the end and all this stuff. No one cared.
Yeah.
No one cared. And I made that mistake, and I was like, that was stupid. I should have just rounded. I rounded that story out, but I left it open-ended at the very end. I was like, that was a dumb concept there.
Because you left it open for the feature.
Or show, whatever it was. Stop doing that. You got to stop doing that. But a feature film is there to sell something.
Yeah.
The feature
that could end and be ambiguous if you need it to be.
Yeah, you can have someone come in. You don't even know what film festival it might happen at. You could have somebody come in and be like, I'm in the mood to buy something, and I'm a buyer. I'm here to purchase a film that I really like, or a film that I think hits our KPIs, for our platform that we're doing. And so they'll come in and they may check your film and try to buy it off you right then and there. It's harder. Feature films are a little more expensive to get into film festivals. You do have to show up if you have a feature film. Short films, I would argue you probably don't need to show up at all of them because you'll probably get into a lot of them and you're not making anything off of it. Though you should go to as many as you possibly can. But feature films, you need to be at all of them.
Yeah.
You need to be at all of them. You need to be talking to people and maybe negotiating. Don't take the first, we talked about this, don't take the first deal that comes in. Unless you are sure you're never going to get a deal again. I know that sounds scary, but I talked to a distributor recently and they were like, you don't have to take the first deal. As a matter of fact, they even said, if you have a short film or a feature film, a really cool piece of advice they gave was like, if you have a feature film that you want to sort of build a rapport with, you do a tour of your film. You don't go to the film festivals. You go to towns and you say, I'm four-walling this place. I'm four-walling that place. You make your own money four-walling all the way through the process, which creates...
And can you explain a little bit more what four-walling
Oh, sure, yeah. You basically just rent out a theater for a time, a day, whatever it may be, and you advertise and market people to come on in to take over. And this guy was like, this dude told me, he was like, build your rapport, get reviews. That's what they were looking for. They want to see good reviews all the way through the process, and then you can negotiate higher. You can negotiate a higher price for your film or whatever.
I feel like that's a concept that we can borrow from theater, where a show goes on a national tour, gets reviews, gets on Broadway, it does big and just runs forever.
Yeah.
Like we should do that with short films. I'm sorry, with feature films more, especially independent films, because you can build your career off of that. You can build a rapport with your community, with, buyers and sellers and stakeholders, and also make some money off your film.
That's the thing, is that like selling your movie right up the top, unless you're going to a Sundance or unless you're going to like Telluride or something.
Unless
like
Netflix is offering you $20 million.
Right then and there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got a little baby guy that you feel really confident about, go to a lot of film festivals. This is actually, I'll bring Aaron up a lot because he's sort of just in our circle, but him and his partner, Justin Benson and David Lawson, they took their very first feature film, Resolution. They went to Tribeca. They got, I think, second place at Tribeca or something like that for their feature film, but it didn't sell. It didn't do anything, but they instead went on a tour of the world with it.
That's crazy.
And what they did is they built that rapport with all of those film festivals with their one feature film that then didn't get them money to do the next one. They actually ended up having to like redo the process of trying to like raise the money again for what became Spring, which I love Spring. And then they made Spring happen, and the same thing. They won some stuff. People loved them. They didn't get the next movie purchased. Instead, they had to raise the money on their own again to do The Endless, which is arguably their most well-known feature film. And then that's the one that like took them over. So they had to go from one to the other, but they had to like take these tours, these long tours, and these what do you call them? Just networking events.
Yeah, networking events. I feel like though you take the one and you do the tour and you don't have that much success with it, it still opens doors for you.
Yeah,
that makes the next opportunity
without a doubt. Yeah, because if you make the next, and you have to make the next one.
You have to make the next one.
When you make the next one, you got the door open, and then you can say, "Hey, can you get me in?" And the
answer is going to be more often than not, yes.
Yeah,
especially because you've had that experience. And speaking on relationship, I think our next topic for the next episode is how to get in a room. Yeah, which is more of a non-festival, the opposite of a festival,
scarier part of that. Yeah.
And I think that's a good segue into that episode is relationships and how to but how to nurture relationships so that you can get into a room and pitch something to like a producer or a production company. But we'll talk about that next episode.
Please.
We got some stuff to talk about.
Okay.
But thank you for coming on for episode 2, and thank you for listening. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you for joining us at the CFA studio for another series of the Indiewood Podcast. You can find the podcast wherever you find your podcasts or on YouTube at the Cinematography for Actors YouTube channel. See you next week.
From the CFA network, Cinematography for Actors is bridging the gap through education and community building. Find out about us and listen to our other podcast at cinematographyforactors.com.
Cinematography for Actors Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. For more information on fiscal sponsorship, donations, because we're tax exempt now, so it's a tax write-off, and upcoming education, you can email us at contact@cinematographyforactors.com. Thanks.